All right, everyone. Welcome to the Angry Asian Uncle podcast. Again, I'm Reynold,
I'm
and
Vic.
accompanying me is Vic. Yes, and then we have a guest today. Uh,
Woo! Our first guest ever
our
on
first
the
guest.
Angry
Yes,
Asian Uncle podcast. Our very
yes,
first guest. Welcome, Nick.
yes.
Thank you.
Welcome. So, Nick is a good friend of mine. We met 10 years ago in Taiwan. So since then, he has. Um, I feel he accomplished a lot in his days or years in Taiwan. He's started a business and he started a family. So, how about a little summary about
Yeah, I
yourself
mean,
for
for
the
all the
list?
listeners out there, this is the first time that I'm meeting Nick as well. So I'm just as
Yeah.
interested and as curious as you are to know more about Nick.
Sure. Well, quick intro on me. So I'm Nick. I'm a Canadian. I've been in Taipei in Taiwan for something between 10 and 15 years. I've done two tech startups here, two VC-backed companies, both building design tools. So raised about 15 million US dollars to bring here to Taiwan to build up teams, ran teams of about 35 people, give or take. Also started a family here in Taiwan. I've got a wife and two sons, a 5-year-old and a 2-year-old, who were born here in Taiwan. They're Taiwanese, and in local school here. That's a little about me.
Okay. So, probably our guest would like to know where are you originally from?
I'm from Nova Scotia in Canada, so it's a small part of Canada, from a very rural, kind of out of the way part of Canada.
Okay. Yes. So, how did you take that jump from there to Taiwan? Because, um, yeah, a lot of small town, usually the first destination they think would not be Taiwan. How did it land in Taiwan, I guess?
So I spent a couple of years traveling full time when I was working remotely, and I would typically just fly to the closest country that didn't require a visa, and I would just do that over and over and over again. So that
Mhm.
chain of flights eventually led to Taiwan, and then I just really liked Taiwan. I enjoyed it. So when I was done my couple of years of traveling, I picked my favorite place, which was Taiwan. Settled down here.
Oh,
Well, before you tell us why Taiwan's your favorite place, I'd like to know, like, how did you and Reynolds meet? How did you guys get acquainted?
I don't even remember. 'Cause it was more than 10 years ago. It was closer to 15 years ago that we met,
yeah,
somewhere
probably.
between the two. Um,
I remember there was a meetup, I think. We
yeah,
were,
it was at some meetup. Um,
yes,
I don't remember the topic of the meetup, but it was just some
yeah, me neither.
public event that was listed up that we both went to.
So this was in
Yes.
the 2010s?
Yeah,
2010s, yeah, I think so. Yeah. And I think Nick was probably more serious about doing, meeting people or doing what was supposed to be do. I was just there for some drinks and
You were just
and
there to
find
party, but
people. I was trying
Nick
to
was actually
recruit
there to
people to go
network
to.
with people.
Yeah, there. I was just there to find people to go to the club with me.
So you were less angry back then. You're like the
Yeah,
less angry Asian uncle back then.
yes. Uh, I was more of a drunk Asian uncle back then.
Well, I mean, Nick, now you can tell us why you decided to choose Taiwan over all the other places you traveled to.
I liked the people in Taiwan. That was the number one thing. After
Oh,
that,
aud-
I,
audio
I
technical issues. Oh, he's gone. Maybe he'll come back. Oh, there he is again.
Uh,
Hi, we lost you for a second there, bud.
let me switch to a different connection.
all
You'd think that Taiwan in 2025 would have really fast internet, but nope, it still has
Is
technical
this
issues.
is this better?
uh, well, I can hear you right now. So
Yeah, can you hear me fine?
yes,
Yes, yes.
Okay. so I'm just plugging something in. We'll stay on this connection. Um, so sorry, what were you saying?
Oh, we were just asking you why you chose Taiwan over other places you've been to.
So people were the number one thing. Just really nice people. After that,
Mm.
I think that the speed of the city in Taipei was really nice for me. So I'm from a small place, like I mentioned. So for me, Taipei is big. For people from bigger cities, it feels small and slow, but it doesn't feel too slow to me. And then you're surrounded by nature, so there's mountains and ocean and river everywhere. So nice people, nice environment, um, right size for me.
So when you first landed in Taiwan, you were immediately in Taipei, or did you go? Were you in another city?
I've only ever lived in Taipei. I've been around Taiwan traveling, but I've never lived somewhere else.
Taipei is awesome. I mean, Taipei is a place that's just convenient and it's easy to get around. Everything's pretty clean and safe. Also, if you want to
Yep.
decompress from the city, you can always just take the MRT, or is a short drive away to the mountains or to a hot spring somewhere.
Yep. Yeah, I get out on my bike and in the mountains as much as I can.
Oh, yes, yes. Oh, nice, nice. So, what I remember before you started your startup, you did some last minute traveling before you came back to Taiwan.
So
Can you go? Yeah.
yeah, I was just doing visa runs because I wasn't back then. I wasn't a resident of Taiwan. So I
Oh,
would stay in Taiwan for 3 months, and then I would go somewhere else for a month or two, and then I would come back to Taiwan and stay here
Yeah, it was the
before
same
I
for me too.
before I
By the
totally
way, yeah.
settled in.
Sorry. Yeah.
Yeah,
oh, okay.
visa runs. Go travel around Asia for visa runs.
Okay.
Yeah. So you must be really familiar with the what they call it, the Bureau of Immigration, was it? Or so you
Yeah,
have to
not
report every 3 months or 4 months or so, right? You just have to get out of the country, and so they can see a stamp on your passport that you actually left the country.
yeah. I mean, that was a long time ago. Um, and they were pretty relaxed about it. They wouldn't. They didn't really care back then. I don't know about today, but back then they didn't care. So you just
Oh,
were
yeah.
treated as a tourist.
Yeah, it's one of those things that I really appreciated about Taiwan too, because having grown up in the Philippines, where everything was inefficient and the bureaucracy was terrible, I was just so pleasantly surprised when I came home that, oh, everything was just so efficient, and you could just do everything yourself. And then most of the time, you don't even have to wait that long. Like they could finish most of the stuff you wanted done on the spot instead of waiting for days or months for it.
Yeah, and that's all really nice. The one thing that I would say though about that is that something like getting treated as a tourist on a visa run is not going to happen if you're Indonesian or Vietnamese.
So it
There's
still
a
depends on which country you're from.
most
Yeah.
most countries will get treated that way, but Southeast Asians of the wrong color will not. So
This is so interesting. Like one of the things about our podcast, me and Reynold, is we always, we like to talk unfiltered truth. Like we just say it as it is. Yeah. So like I really appreciate hearing
Right.
that. Yeah. Because we're all
Yeah.
about giving the facts straight, right?
this is the
Yeah.
only
And
black guy that I know of for Taiwan is Indonesians and Vietnamese. Um, will have a different experience here. Well, not if they're upper class, they're going to be fine. But if they're here to
right.
work a more manual job, they're going to have a little bit of a different experience here than everybody else. But I think that's, as far as I know, that's the only negative thing I can think of for Taiwan. Everything else is great.
Yeah, Reynold. The joke here is that Taiwanese people are actually very racist. It's just they're not very obvious
Yeah.
about it, especially the
I,
the popo mama. The ones with
yes.
for going
Yes.
up there in age.
Yeah.
They're actually they're closet racists. They
Yes.
or they're
I know
racist
that too.
without knowing that they're racist. Like for example, like my parents, they would always like, oh, they would call foreigners atoa, and I was like, oh, what does that mean? It's like, oh yeah, their nose, right? Their nose, it's all sharp,
Right.
and they got a long bridge, and so that means to tok tok. And I'm like, oh, okay, that's so
Right.
racist, mom, but
Yeah. and
but they
and it
shouldn't think
comes
anything of it, right?
no, it's second nature to them. Yeah, because it's just like regular talk for them, or like
I mean, they don't mean
it's
anything
a
bad.
regular
Right? I
action.
guess it's just like so used to calling foreigners that, like or how Singaporeans, for example, would call foreigners amo. You know, that means hong mao. So like it's
Oh,
just
yeah,
it's
yeah,
it's
that's
so
right.
racist if you're PC, but then if you're a local, it's just funny, right?
Right. It's,
Now,
it's
speaking of
just
that, though, Nick,
regular.
I mean, like, have you? How do you feel about that, though? Like, you know, what I just said. Does that affect you or bother you at all?
What, the names for foreigners?
Yeah, I mean, just like generally the behavior of people, the locals, especially the aunties, right? Aunties, yeah, towards foreigners here. I mean, do
I
you
don't think
do you
um
feel bothered by it, or?
no, not much. So one of the things that I like about Taiwan is that at least relative to other Northeast Asian countries like Japan or Korea, you don't get treated super differently here as a foreigner. There definitely is some different treatment for foreigners, but if I went to Japan, for example, I'm an alien there, and I'm
Mm.
going to get treated completely different for my whole life. Whereas here in Taiwan, there is some level of treating foreigners differently, but it's pretty mild compared to Japan or Korea, which is one of the things that I like, is I can just be closer to normal here.
Did you guys ever
Yeah.
notice that there are certain advantages to being a white person here in Taiwan? I think this is just me, okay? I mean, feel free to chime in, but I think growing up, I saw that Taiwanese people are generally curious, and so therefore a little bit more polite towards white people. Do you find that's the case, Nick?
I think there are superficial advantages. So it's easiest to explain this in a business context. So if you're going to start a business here in Taiwan, like a tech startup, like I did, for example, then yes, everyone's going to be more polite to you, like you just said. But that only goes so deep. If you start to talk about actually getting into business with people, like you want to be an investor or not, and then they start to see it as a negative. Um,
Oh, that's such an
so
interesting point you bring up. Yes.
Yes.
it depends. Like I've had a lot of investors. Yeah, you can get negatives. Um, but on a day-to-day basis, like if you're just going to order coffee or something, yeah, you get. I think everyone's polite to everyone, but you get a little more of that um, when people think that you're a tourist.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
navigating the double speak in Asian cultures is really an art. It's, I mean, we struggle with that. Even us, we struggle with that too, because you know how Asians are. We say one thing, but we really mean another, right?
Yeah, which is
Yes.
true,
Yeah.
but again, Japan and Korea would do that like way more
Yeah, it's
so.
much worse over there in Japan and Korea. I think. Yeah,
Yeah.
Yes.
So
I think Taiwanese people are a little bit more straightforward compared to them.
yeah, only compared to them, not compared to many other people, but compared to them.
What about Southeast Asians? I mean, Filipinos, Thai, Viets.
I mean, I don't know. Like, so I've been down in Southeast Asia a ton, but I've never stayed there long enough to have well-informed opinions about any of those places, how the people really are.
Yeah,
I've
yeah.
only ever been a tourist in those places for a couple of weeks at a time.
It's so interesting the dynamics of these things. I mean, like you said, I mean, even among Asians, there's the fancy Asians versus the jungle Asians, right? It's so non PC, but yeah,
Yes.
I do think you're right. The fancy Asians, East Asians mainly, right, get treated much better. I mean, your example to your point about going to the visa office. I mean, if you're a fancy Asian, you usually get treated a little differently, from if you're a jungle Asian, right? I mean, don't get me wrong. I mean, I grew up in the Philippines, so like, I feel like I can say that in a way. So because in the context of things, I really do think that people can't help but compare, and sometimes they would have preconceived opinions about you if you come from a quote unquote more developing country.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
it's a class thing.
it's true all over the world, though. Every country has the neighboring countries that it looks up or down on. That's true everywhere. It just
But now that
happens
you've
that,
been here for about 10 years, I mean, what are some of the insights that you have that you can share with people?
on what kind of topics?
I don't know. What about day to day, or maybe just compared to life back home?
Um, so I haven't lived in Canada for 20 years. So I left soon after high school. And then I went to live in Mexico for a bit. Then I was back in Canada for just 8 months before I started traveling. So I don't actually have as much comparison as one would think in terms of like really living in a place. I've been here in Taiwan as far like you don't remember the first couple of years of your life. So I actually have more
Right.
memory living here than Canada, than
In that
anywhere.
sense, Taiwan is actually more your home now.
Yeah, kind of. Um,
No,
kind of. I think the insights are it's you can have anything you want in Taiwan except a career. That'd be one. You have yeah,
That's so true.
you have to work in a
Let's get into
pretty
that. Let's get into that. Why is that for,
yeah.
especially for younger audiences who are listening? By the way, I just realized that my son has been passing around our podcast to his classmates, and surprisingly, they're actually listening to it, which kind of creeps me out. But all right, for the younger listeners out there, let's get into that.
Maybe
Why is
trying
that?
to learn English, right? I don't know.
No. I mean, like he goes to an international school, so they're all good. I mean,
Oh, they
I
know
think they're
English,
more
right?
interested in the topics that we talk about in our podcast. Also, I think they just think it's funny that two angry Asian uncles are going at it, right? All right. Anyway, yeah,
Oh,
Nick, please,
right.
please explain it to us. Yeah,
So I shouldn't say it so bluntly because you can have a career in Taiwan. You just have to do it in semiconductors, basically.
it all leads
Um,
back to
Uh,
semiconductors, right? Yeah.
right.
yeah, all the good
TSMC.
stuff leads back to semiconductors, and then you have the basic economy to support that on like retail and whatever, like the basic things that support people living here. But the only real industry is semiconductors.
Yeah,
Right.
you bring up such a good point. Yeah. I
That's
mean, from my
right.
experience, and I said this in a separate podcast before, a totally different one. Somebody asked me about this, and I told them that based on my life experience, working here in Taiwan, I realized that no matter what your interests are in life, for example, if you're into the arts, you like design or you like marketing, but your life here is in Taiwan, in the end, you always get absorbed into some kind of tech industry because there's just not a lot of room for other things. And the tech industry, tech companies are so big that their marketing department would probably need somebody, or their art department would probably need somebody. So it's kind of unfortunate in a way that you don't really have a lot of options if you want to, get employed.
Yeah, and I think
Yeah.
that that's going to become more true over time. With AI, there's two big factors that I see affecting Taiwan's economy over the next 5, 10 years. That's not even touching geopolitical things, but just AI. The first thing is that there's so much money to be made in the hardware layer of AI that all of the capital that
Mhm.
would have been um, distributed among many different industries in Asia, but especially in Taiwan, is just going to get more and more concentrated in things like semiconductors. So you won't see an immediate effect of that, but I think over the coming years, you're going to see a lot less companies getting capital, so growing in any industry other than the hardware layer. So the concentration that already exists here in Taiwan is just going to become even more true, I think. But then the other factor is, at least on the tech side, software side, I should say, which is the only industry I really know anything about. Um, some of the offshoring that happened from the United States, so building software teams here for US companies, essentially, would happen because the cost of payroll in the United States was so high. And actually, we could get into a salary comparison in a second too. But with AI, they need to hire fewer engineers in the United States so they can start onshoring again, and reduce their reliance on software happening over here. So I think semiconductor concentration is going to get higher, and the very little other tech stuff that we had going on here in Taiwan is going to become less.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah,
Yeah.
I agree. Yeah,
I agree. Yes.
I used to work
Yeah.
for
No.
a
No.
software
Interesting.
company as well here in Taiwan, but it was a Japanese company with a presence here, and that was like what 20, yeah, 20 years ago. And all you said, absolutely yes, I agree. If you look at the trends, even back then, you can see that it was slowly headed towards that direction. I mean, Taiwan has always been a, in Zhongwen, we call it Daikong, right? It's a country that's based on OEM, even before tech. I mean, during the generation of my parents, it was textiles, shoes, um, leather, umbrellas, whatever you can think of, right? It was like
Right.
Taiwan had its start that way. Back then when everything was, there's so many niche that nobody really filled, and it was easy to get a loan, and people would just do everything that they can, whatever they can. And then slowly Taiwan just got more and more into the tech industry. And then fast forward to my time when I was in software, uh, the big question back then was, how does Taiwan innovate and not just be reliant on hardware? Because we're good at that. There's the Zyxels, right? They make a lot of the routers. There's a lot of cable companies like Foxconn used to make cables, right?
Mm-hmm.
But how do we grow out from just being hardware producers and OEM manufacturers, and how do we become more innovative, and how do we get into software? And as a software salesman, basically that's what I was. It was very hard to convince a lot of the big companies that I approached that they needed software solutions. But towards the end of my career doing that, I realized that it was a number one, very hard to change their minds, to adopt new ideas outside of hardware, and b, they were able to solve a lot of the issues anyway by integrating a lot of the software drivers into their chipsets. So they didn't really need to find a proprietary software provider anymore. And c, I think I saw the trend coming in that, the reason why my company set up office here was we were hoping to find cheaper labor, because software engineers are always in demand. It's hard to find software engineers, and overseas it's quite expensive. But if you look in other places in Southeast Asia or even Taiwan, for example, you might be able to find software engineers that are more affordable. At least that used to be the case. It's not really the case anymore. And now with the advent of AI, I see what your point completely, which is, despite our best efforts to bring new innovative ideas or to push the industry in certain directions, it will go where it goes. And currently in this climate, I think to your point, that's exactly what's happening. Most of it is consolidating towards chips and AI, and that in turn would affect other industries. For example, if you're a software engineer, maybe you would have to rethink what your role is in this new age. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I'm really thinking whether I'm going to live in Taiwan because of this. I might have to leave because I think that this is going to get worse and worse and worse. So,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah, I
Yeah.
don't know if I'm going to have many opportunities to feed my family in the next couple of years if I stay here in Taiwan. I might need to get out now while I still can.
That's the reality of it. Reynold, what do you think? I mean, I think you studied computer engineering, right?
Yeah. I studied computer, but I never really did anything outside of college. But I know the job market. I mean, even just as a whole in Taiwan, it's just very low wages. I know a lot of friends, whether um, they they went to Taiwan, but they eventually moved back to the U.S. just because of the salary issue. Just like they can't provide for their family as much because of all the low salary or whatnot. Unless they're like some doing some family business, or they're doing business or something. Export, import, export, or some other stuff. I don't know, manufacturing or something. But it's when it comes to just a job, like a career. I just don't see it there, or enough to provide. Maybe I'm just used to more, things costing more here in California. But even when I went back, like I really wanted to stay in Taiwan myself. And there was really not a lot of things I can do. And then going back to the discrimination part, um, Taiwanese likes to discriminate disabled people too, because when I
That's so
approach people
unfortunate.
for
Oh
work, yeah,
no. Oh
right? Because when I
no.
approach them for work, it's like I remember I even went to like the labor, um, like the government, like the government job placement department, whatever, like that helps
Right.
people get
Okay.
jobs and stuff like. I think at one point I was like, hey, I want to learn to be a baker or something, and then they're like, no, you can't do this. What you can do is just be a massage therapist. Like, but I don't want to
Oh,
massage people. Oh, yeah, I'm okay with getting one, but I don't want to. I don't want to
I'm
massage
okay
people.
with getting one, but I don't want to give it to others.
Yeah, I don't want to give it to others. So I'm
Nah, but
like,
that's the
yeah,
unfortunate truth about Taiwan. I think wages have stagnated for what,
yes,
25, 30 years, right, Nick? I mean, it hasn't really moved
Well,
that much. Recently, there was on the news that the basic income is now raised a little bit by a couple of thousand NT dollars, was it? But then that's so what? I mean, it doesn't. It's not enough to feed a family.
this really depends on your job. So I've been looking for my first job in 20 years, um, and I've been doing the math on a salary I could get here, a salary I could get in San Francisco, working in tech, for example, and I can get paid maybe 2.5 or three times more in San Francisco. But if you plug that into a spreadsheet and you remove taxes and cost of living and just say how much is going to go into my savings account every year in total dollars, you often do better here, actually. Like the 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 headline number here on your salary can be lower. And I've got a kind of like a friend mentor type guy who's probably in his 50s now, and he was a senior leader in companies in the United States and then also now here. And he told me the same thing. Once he moved to Taiwan, his salary got like divided by three, but the amount of money going into his savings account every year was actually higher. He was actually
Yeah, yeah, you
better
bring out a
off
good point.
being
Yeah,
here.
yeah, yeah.
that's true.
But because it's just so
But
expensive to live in other places, right? I mean, San Francisco. I mean, just the rent or property prices alone, it's crazy.
Yep. And so you're just like 40% tax, and then you're going to rent, and then you're going to other cost of living on top of that. And to me, I think that people always measure salary as just salary number. But to me, you should measure how much money is left over after taxes and cost of living. How much
Yeah,
disposable income
we
is
haven't
left
even talked
over.
about the working culture, right, Nick? I mean, maybe you can tell us your insights about that. For example, in Japan, there are all these videos coming out about people complaining about being worked to death, and how the culture is so unfair to workers because they're expected to do a lot of things which are just not very pleasant for them. Right in Taiwan, I realize there's some of that, but maybe not as bad as Japan. Oh, what are your insights about that?
For work culture, the biggest and most important thing, I think, again, I'm a tech startup guy, so that's how I think of these things. If you go into a tech startup in San Francisco that has 10 people, those people are going to wear different hats every day. Um, they're going to be one part product manager, one part engineer, one part QA. They're going to bounce all over the place, taking on different responsibilities depending on what's going on today. They're very generalist. In Taiwan's work culture, people tend to be hyper specialist. They have one hat and they work really hard at that hat and they do it really well, but they have one hat. Um, I think a metaphor that you can think is, um, when you have the generalists like the United States, if you imagine a baseball team and you imagine only two people out on the field, when you hit the ball to somewhere where there isn't someone in a position, it doesn't matter. They'll run over and get the ball. In Taiwan, when you hit it to an empty position, those two people just kind of look at the ball. They're like, well,
That's
you better hire someone to go get that ball because my position was this plate over here. They tend to be very specialist. And people often say they think this is due to Taiwan's school. I don't think that's true because there are lots of Taiwanese overseas who do not act like this. And I've also hired many recent grads who may show up with this mindset, but you pretty quickly change it with the recent grads to be more dynamic and wearing different hats. But the people that we are never able to change are the people who've been working in Taiwan for a while, for a number of years.
yeah, yeah, good observation. Yeah.
And the,
And
the
my
last thing
theory, my oh, sorry, go ahead. Yes.
I was just going to say the last thing I would say about this is what I'm not saying is that Taiwan doesn't have those generalist kind of adventure-seeking people. But in the US, that personality type is drawn to innovation, startups, and things like this. In Taiwan, that exact same personality type is drawn to leave Taiwan, to go move
Oh
somewhere
yeah, good
else.
point. Yes, yes, we're losing talent that way. Exactly. Yes.
Yeah, but a specific kind of talent, the innovative talent, the
Right.
adventurous talent.
Yeah. To your point about why people behave that way, that they won't pick up the ball and you have to hire someone for that. My theory about that is uh, most workers who go into a big company, they generally view the workplace as some place that is not exactly hostile, but they have to look out for themselves. And so if they go and do other things, in their mind, they're contributing, they're helping out, and this is something that they can do and help a company grow. But if something goes wrong, usually in the Taiwanese culture, they get blamed for that. And that's very unfortunate because it doesn't foster any kind of creativity or ownership of your work or just thinking out of the box. And I think a lot of it has to do with a lot of the Taiwanese bosses who are from that generation and they don't know how to manage people correctly. And since they don't foster that and people sense that they're going to get into trouble, they generally don't pick up any of the slack or do other things that they were, unless it was what they were hired for, which is very unfortunate.
Yeah, and it's not always a bad thing, because basically the work culture in Taiwan is that people play their position. They work really, really hard within the box of their roles and responsibilities. Now, if you have sufficient scale in your company to fill all the positions, then you can build out a really good process that functions really well. In the US, process would be called bureaucracy. In Taiwan, it's typically called support. If you don't have that process there, you're not supporting me to do my job. Um, if you go back to
But
the
what if you're a
baseball
startup though?
metaphor,
Yeah, but what if
yeah,
you're a
so
startup?
it gets
That's when the
hard.
problems be. Yeah.
I think this is why almost very close to all the successful software companies that I know of in Taiwan were corporate spinouts that had high headcount from day one. So they
Mm,
could fill all these positions and function effectively early on. And then
yeah.
the small companies that have 3, 4, 5, 25 people, they really, really struggle with this. I actually think this is the number one reason that there's not more successful startups here in Taiwan is
Mm,
this.
mm.
We have all kinds of
Yeah,
other
yeah.
problems with like capital availability or we're far away from certain markets. There's all kinds of other issues, but I think this is the number one issue, and it's the one that never gets talked about publicly. I know a lot of other founder CEOs here in Taiwan, and privately, everyone thinks
Mm-hmm.
this is a huge deal, but publicly, we just talk about like governments should give more visas or so, like stuff that doesn't matter that isn't really affecting us. This work
That's
culture thing is much more important.
Yeah. Also, I think a lot of employees just don't give a damn, because in their minds, it's like, oh, I'm getting paid so little. Because, with the advent of the internet, everybody can just with a tap of a finger find out information, right? So maybe you can search for a similar role if it was in Singapore, if it was in the US, somewhere else. You'll be like, oh wow, so this is how much people are making, and then you find out that this is how much you're making here in Taiwan, and it creates a kind of atmosphere where people just don't give a damn. Like, well, I'm getting paid so little. Why should I go out of my way to do more for the company?
I,
I notice a lot of that happening.
I think that is probably true in general, but in a specific company, Taiwan does have um, people who are the opposite of everything that we're saying. So Taiwan has some super mission driven people. Taiwan has some people who really love wearing multiple hats who continue to live here and didn't move. Taiwan has some of these people. Um, those people typically don't have opportunities. So if you're able to find them, and that's the hard part is just finding them in the first place. I think you can actually build a extremely mission driven team here in Taiwan, which is extremely passionate about their work and much more so than you would be able to do in a market like San Francisco or something like that. Um, on the macro level, I agree with what you said, but on the micro level, I think you can actually cause the opposite. Um,
But Nick, even if you put a team like that together, is the environment in general or the market in general conducive to supporting a team like that? That's the question, right?
the hiring market, you mean?
No, I mean even if you're able to, put together a dream team or like the Avengers, right? You're able to put together a team of very highly motivated, put on different hats people. Like you said, they're hard to find, but even if you're able to do it, you gather a team. But would the Taiwanese market culture or just some other things, other factors, be conducive for a team to perform at its optimum, right? I think that's really more the issue. It's not really a question of finding talent. It's just, will the market allow for it to operate without hindrance?
It depends what you mean by the market. So if you mean the hiring market, I think you could solve that. If you mean the market as in customers who buy your products and services, I just wouldn't build for Taiwan in the first place. So whatever I was building here, I'd be building for other markets, international markets. So I would just circumvent that issue entirely. If you're
Mm.
talking about like government regulation and stuff, people always complain about like opening a bank account or like whatever other bureaucracy. And at the end of the day, that's just not important. Like
Mm.
over the years of building a company, the 6 hours that you had to wait in the bank to open that account is not a big deal. There's way
Mm.
bigger factors in whether or not your company is going to succeed. Every time that there's some event where the government is asking for feedback about starting companies in Taiwan, it annoys me how much everyone's talking about banking because
Mm.
it's like literally hours of your business journey. There's bigger problems than that. Banking is always the number one topic.
Yeah, wow. Entrepreneurship, huh? So many factors to juggle, right, Reynold?
Yeah, yeah. There's so many other. I think these are just little stuff like
I mean,
I'm
from
more
the
worried
nitty
about the
gritty.
money coming in, right? I'm more worried about the
Yeah,
money
that's a
coming
good point. Yeah, I mean, where's the
in.
funding coming from, right?
Yeah, we're Chinese. We could stuff it under the mattress. It's okay.
Nick, did you see a lot of examples here in Taiwan of startups trying to get funding from the government?
The government's failing Taiwan in this respect very badly. I actually think it's not illegal corruption, but it's effectively corruption and nepotism. There's a okay, anyway, the way that a startup ecosystem grows is reinforcing loop. So you have one company become successful, then because it's successful, people from that company start new companies, and because it's successful, investors start investing in new similar companies, and some of those companies become successful, and it starts the loop all over again. To get those loops started, you need governments to subsidize it, basically, with the funding or training and programs, just whatever it can do to put its finger on the scales and subsidize that. There's a group, uh, the NDF. the NDC, the National Development Fund, the National Development Council, who manages most of this stuff on behalf of the Taiwan government. And it is doing an incredibly bad job. This is another one of those things that is private conversations between the people who raise capital here in Taiwan, including the investors and founders, like all these people, um, are just, well, okay, it's doing an incredibly bad job in a lot of ways, but the one that frustrates me the most is that the money that they give out is always given to a family member or business relationship
Oh,
of
absolutely.
the
Yeah.
people
Yeah.
who are making the decision. And it's tax money.
Yeah.
Right.
You hit the
Yeah.
nail
So
right on the head with that one. Yeah. This is something that people don't like to really talk about in the open, but I mean, if you really look into it, that's exactly what's happening.
Yeah,
it's
it's
the
corruption.
reality.
It is.
Yeah.
It is. Yeah. It's not so in your face, but it is happening.
They're not breaking the law because it's up to their judgment who they give money to. And if they're related to you or feel like they're going to get something back in return, they judge that you are a good investment.
Yeah,
If
I
they're,
mentioned this to Reynold before in a
Favoritism.
previous podcast that one of my experiences when we were out there approaching different telecom operators is that okay, so they would open up a like a bidding system, right, to make it look good, right? So like they
yeah,
would invite 7, 8 different vendors to come in and bring their proposal just to make it look really nice that they've done their due diligence. But if you've been to enough of these, bidding, then you will know that actually the choice for which vendor to choose has already been decided. I mean, it's usually someone they know. It could be even a former colleague that has left the company and started his own company. So there's a lot of under the table dealings. But yeah, just to make it look good, right? They open it up for everybody. But then after a while, like, oh, okay, so more or less it's decided. And it's a collusion of sorts that it's not just one vendor that gets it. It's like they talk about it among themselves and they would say, like, okay, you can do part A, then we'll give him part B, then he'll do part C. And just to make it look good, right?
Right.
So it's all about connections. It's about people. This is one part that Reynolds and I get upset about as angry Asian uncles. It's all about connections and nepotism and money, and
Yes.
this is
There's
so
no
ingrained in the culture, right?
no equal opportunity here.
Yeah,
It's,
less definitely,
yeah.
yeah, yeah. I mean, even for small business, Nick. I don't know if you're familiar with smaller businesses, but non-tech businesses like I mean, even everyday stuff like the people who do your cement or build your build your aluminum structures if you want something added to your house or even carpentry. They're usually run by family businesses. I don't know if I mentioned this
Mhm.
in a previous podcast, but it's usually like a company, a very small one, maybe like 6 to 8 people, and most of them are related, right? It would probably be like an uncle, couple of cousins, who are running the whole thing, and then they make pretty good living. Like each area has its own designated company that would do or handle certain things. For example, I had a greenhouse built in my house a couple of years ago, and I realized that you can't really just break into the business if you're an outsider. Like there's a certain company that's in charge of my area, and then they won't tell you that directly. But if you get to know them enough, they'll tell you how it works, and then they make pretty good profit margins from the whole thing. I mean, I was doing simple calculations. I'm not even exactly sure how much their profit margins are, but but even just simple math alone, I'm like, for 5 days of work, materials probably cost this and that. It's like, wow, that's a good 40, 45% margin on doing a simple project, right? And then so a small business can be very profitable and they can make a good living. So that's even in small businesses, that's how it's done here.
yeah. For government, it all frustrates me, but for government, it especially frustrates me because I think that I've been here long enough to feel like I can see a difference in the young people today, that they're more hungry, more ambitious than 10 or 15 years ago, the same age. And the government, who is responsible for investing this money, not just in companies, but into other investors who would then invest this money. That government is responsible for these people. Like that function in the government is supposed to be building an economy for these young people who don't have money now, who are like hungry and want to work and who want opportunities, and they're just
Yeah,
a
they're
bunch
being
of
failed. They're being failed. Yeah,
already wealthy people using the
yeah,
tax money to make
Right.
themselves and
yeah,
their family more wealthy.
yeah.
Frustrates
Exactly.
me.
You know,
Yes.
it's even worse in the Philippines, though. I mean, other
Oh, yeah,
Southeast Asian countries,
Taiwan's
it's
not
even
that.
worse.
Most of the world is worse, but
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember a different project. Um, so this is not tech related. This is a cultural related. So on the surface, it looks like Taiwan is very progressive and it's very modern in a lot of sense, but it's still very clannish. Yeah, and I don't know if a lot of foreigners understand this, but I think if you've lived here X amount of years, you would be able to, start to understand that slowly. There's this one cultural project I remember in, well, I'm not going to name any names or towns, but so they have to do a rejuvenation project to kind of rejuvenate the buildings, especially those from the Japanese era. Right, there are still some buildings that are very pretty, but they've been,
Mm.
fallen into disuse and they're kind of dilapidated. You need some funds from the government, from the cultural side of government, to allocate those funds and fix up the place. And I realized that it's a money making scheme for, well, I wouldn't call them warlords, but then local influential families. They're the ones who, first of all, know about the project, right? Knows how much money is involved, and then they're the ones who would write the proposal on how they intend to rejuvenate, their area. And like you said, the project is almost 100% guaranteed to be given to them, and then they would use that fund on their own discretion, like how they would, which vendors they would pick, which carpenters they would use. And there's a lot of opportunities for kickbacks here, right? So it's not very blatant, but it's all over the place. And this is not small amounts. I mean, you skim a little off the top here, you skim a little bit off the top there, and it's just wealth flowing into one direction. And then, like you said, to your point, I just feel that a lot of young people are missing out on opportunities because some people are just greedy bastards, right? So,
there's not a lot of there's almost no class mobility in Taiwan. Wealthy families stay
Mm.
wealthy, poor families stay
Yes.
poor. Basically 100%, like it's 99.9.
Right. Yeah.
well, you
It's
mentioned earlier in the show that, in fact, this is driving you to think about whether or not you should start looking into moving your family out of Taiwan. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
I just don't think that there's going to be, at least I'm not confident that there's going to be good work opportunities for me here over time. And I think that
Mhm.
the work opportunities somewhere like the United States are going to tighten up also. So it's going to get more and more difficult over time to choose to relocate there and find a job. The window is going to get smaller and smaller and smaller for
Mm,
still having an opportunity to find a job there. So I'm not 100% confident in any of these predictions, but they're all trending such that I could get squeezed into living here in Taiwan and not being able to work and not being able to move and not being able to get a job. And I could get stuck, and I've got kids that I'm worried about. So it's already
Mhm.
difficult to get a job in the US from here.
mm,
Very
mm.
tough job market right
Yeah.
now. But I think that's just going to get worse. So I think I may need to leave while it's still possible, even if it's
Right,
difficult.
beating it to the punch, right? Yeah, yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
Okay.
and I'm already behind the
What about
curve on that.
the? Well, everyone has their own timeline, I think. But what about the aspect of if it wasn't for the financial issue? It's want to ask you how you feel about raising kids in Taiwan. Like if it wasn't, if you didn't have to worry about money, right? Every person's dream, right? How would you feel about staying in Taiwan and raising your kids, or is it something that because you mentioned the younger generation, it's getting harder for them. Do you want to move for them as well, and not just for yourself, but for them, for their future and opportunities?
if I wasn't worried about work, then by default I would just stay here forever. Like I might ask myself the question on whether my kids would be better off around high school age to go to Canada or
Mm,
something, but
right.
I might just as well answer that no, they're fine staying here. It's purely that, like I said before, you can have everything you want in Taiwan except a career.
Right.
So I'm a little worried about that.
So in short, it's like it's a good place if you already have the money.
Yeah, be a wealthy Taiwanese family. That's the way that you
Right. There you go.
pay,
Yeah,
pay
be a
here.
wealthy Taiwanese family. If you already
Be a
have the money,
wealthy. Yeah.
healthcare is good, standards of living are good. You already have enough. That's a good place to stay. But then if you're here
Right.
expecting to have a career and make it big, it could be a little tough.
Yeah,
Yeah. They
it's
don't have that.
and for me, make it big just means like retire at 65 without being a burden on my kids. That's making it big. Even that
Yeah, for our
here,
generation, right? That's
It's very
that's our
nice.
definition. That's good enough.
Yes. There we go. Yes. Yeah.
Reynold, in a
That's my
previous
definition.
one of our previous episodes, we were talking about our parents' generation, right? And I mentioned that
Yes. Yeah.
it's getting harder to make the type of wealth that they had an opportunity to make. Remember,
Yeah.
I mean, this is something that a lot of the
Opportunity.
elders, yeah, they would tell you. Like, yeah, they admit that things are different, times are different, and their era where they can be tycoons and make boatloads of money is really not that feasible anymore in this day and age. And so we have to think differently, have to acquire wealth a little differently from they do. So
Yeah.
yeah, to Nick's point, I think that we've all felt that because if you've been working for Taiwan for any length of time at all, even if you're just an English teacher, right? I mean, it could be anything. You're part of the economy. You're trying to make a living here. You'll get a sense of all the things we talked about today.
Right.
yeah,
That's
yeah, it can be.
yeah.
Well, like I said, the after tax and cost of living, the salaries here, in my opinion, are they could be better, but they're not as bad as people say that they are. Um, but you have all this multi-generational wealth going into real estate. You have all these government agencies responsible for tech investment giving it to their cousin, and like all these. But if you just want to work a job somewhere, then I think you're
Mm,
more or less just as well off here as somewhere else, unless you want to buy a house. Um, but if you have other ambitions, then it's harder here.
So, kids, if you're listening, remember what Uncle Reynolds always likes to say. He's the type of person who likes to roll up his sleeve and do the work instead of throwing money at things, which I 100% agree. But sometimes it's not
oh yeah. Get your hands
really your
dirty.
fault. Even if you get your hands dirty, if the macro conditions of your environment isn't really conducive or helping you achieve your dreams, sometimes it's really not your fault. You can work hard, but if the opportunities are limited, then you don't really get that far ahead.
Yeah, some
Yeah.
elevators go
Oh
up,
my. Yeah.
some go down, some don't move. You got to step in the right elevator, and I think the Taiwan elevator, from the perspective of a software guy like me, is going down.
Mhm.
That's why I might take a leave. The semiconductor elevator is going straight up. There
I
are
don't think the
some
software
careers here.
elevator has ever gone really up in Taiwan in the first place. That's my view, at
Yeah.
least.
It's, it should have
No,
just
but
stayed
now
put
it's
or something.
but now it's like they cut the cable off the elevator and
Yeah, it's even
Oh
worse.
it's
man.
just falling.
It's free falling.
Yeah. Again, I think partly, I think it's part of the culture. I mean, I'm Taiwanese, right? I mean, even though I grew up abroad, and a part of me kind of understands why it was so hard to, you know, suggest all these solutions to my then customers, because they would always rebut with things like, "Oh, the cost," or like even one of their favorite strategies, Nick, was they would like to always propose, I'm not going to pay you anything up front. Like you're asking for this amount of money and then you want royalties on top of that once I get these shipments going. I'm not going to pay you anything up
Mm,
front. We don't have that kind of money, even though they do, but they're just cheap ass
mm.
bastards. They're not going to do it, right? So they
Right.
propose like, give it to me for free. And I'm a big company. Once they start shipments, then you collect royalties. How about that? So instead of asking, for example, 20 cents, I'll give you 30 cents if you don't ask for anything up front. And to a lot of software companies, it's a hard pill to swallow because everybody needs to survive, right? You have overhead, you got to pay all your engineers. There are costs to running a business, and you would like to get something up front instead of just waiting for the damn thing to ship, right? So it's a very Taiwanese mentality. And also another thing that I used to hear a lot was like, "Okay, well, if you insist that I pay you, I'm going to be an asshole about it. I'm going to pay you, but since now I'm a paying customer, I'm going to be up your ass all the time. I'm going to call you 24 hours a day, any time of the
Yeah.
day. You, you have to show up. You have to support because I paid for it. I'm a paying customer now." And so that it's part of the culture. Oh, gosh.
You need that special treatment. Now I'm VIP. Actually, I wrote the check. So
Oh,
I
gosh.
guess
Yeah.
I guess this would be the the negative wisdom part. Be like, okay, kids, don't be broke, marry rich.
Come on. Let's all right. Let's do some
I just
constructive. Let's build this up a little bit. I mean, but Nick, I mean, like, okay, despite all these issues, these challenges, do you see a silver lining somewhere, especially for younger people?
Well, I love Taiwan. Like our conversation's kind of focused on the negatives, but this is my favorite place in the world. Like I think Taiwan is great. Um, I think there, I think that for young people, the silver lining is each other. Like I was saying earlier, I think that the generation of young people, I'm consistently seeing more ambitious young people. And I think that that generation is not going to tolerate all these things we're complaining about as much as previous generations did.
That's
And
beautiful, Nick. It's beautiful.
yeah,
Yeah.
that'd be the silver lining. I mean, it's on them to change it, but I think they have each other's support to change it.
I usually tell my son, well, I guess he's Gen Z. I said, well, I told him that I feel that the hope for the future lies on Gen Z or whatever comes after that. In that, I noticed that they're not as willing to put up with the bullshit that we had to endure. So they're just not going to do it. And in fact, they're holding the cards now because, as you know, population is on the decline here in Taiwan, right? It's tanking. So a lot of businesses, even though they would like to impose their will or their way of doing things, which is very toxic and unhealthy, younger people simply refuse to take the job. And a lot of companies had to adjust. It's either you bend or you simply won't exist as a business anymore because you can't hire anybody. And so I keep telling my son, I mean, the hope is the younger generation. As long as you guys are not willing to put up with this toxic environment, you put your foot on the ground and say this is where we draw the line. And I think there's hope for change. And I think as much as it sounds bad, but I think it's really a case of like you're waiting for the old guard to die. Waiting for some of them to at least step down, right? Step down, retire, or to pass away before a lot of significant changes can happen. It sounds so morbid, I know.
yes,
Yeah, well,
yeah,
I'd agree. I think the younger generation is less tolerant, and I hope that that lack of tolerance applies in the right places, like telling the government to screw itself when it is being corrupt.
right.
It's so dirty. Like I told Reynold in a previous podcast, one time when we were taken out to dinner by a government agency. They wanted to meet my boss from Japan, and they spent all this money, right? They even brought gifts, like for example, I think alcohol or some kind of porcelain. And we were there for like 15, 20 minutes, just shook hands to formalize the deal. And then none of the food was touched, but easily, just quick calculations again, it's like 25, 30,000 NT gone. And these are all taxpayer money, right? So that's when I really opened my eyes to see, oh, this is how government officials spend our money. Like, that's a month, that's a month's wage for somebody who just, graduated and out in the market, right? I mean, they're scrimping and saving and just eating noodles every day to try to get by. And, a government agent could just spend 30,000 bucks on on a table of food that nobody really touched. So a lot of disparities.
Yeah, yeah.
Cool.
I
Well,
agree.
it's a work day for me. I'm gonna have to run in a minute for a meeting that's coming up.
Okay. Oh, it's
All
such a
right.
great conversation. I really had fun, Nick. Thank you for
Yes.
joining us.
Thank you, Nick, for joining us. Thank you.
We
Hopefully,
hope
maybe
you
you could
come back
join us
again sometime. Maybe we can rant about some other things next time. Maybe less negative, right? It just the conversation
again. Yes.
took that turn, so we went with it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
yeah.
your
We should
name's
talk about the positive
a-
Taiwan.
angry is the first word in the podcast title, so I thought it was meant to go that direction.
But remember, boys and
Just to
girls,
throw people off. It's a
all
gimmick.
uncles
It's
in
a
this
gimmick.
podcast, we're all still very positive. We
Yeah.
hope things are always turning out for the best. Stay positive. Stay
Yes.
positive.
Yes.
You can be
Stay
angry,
positive.
but stay positive.
Yes.
Thanks, Nick.
Thank
See you
you.
again
See you.
soon.
Thanks, Nick. Thanks.
All right.
See you
Bye.
soon. And see you
Bye.
later.
Thanks for the
And
insights.
bye. Oh, yes. Oh, I should say, uh, yeah, thank you everyone for listening today. Subscribe to our show. And again, share. And I hope to see you on the next episode.